Hello. Welcome to the session, Finding the Balance Between Privacy and Cybersecurity. So we'll have 4 presentations from the panelists, and after that we have time for questions and there will be answers from them. I think you probably, if you have been in another session, you have the app. You can, it's not on the screen, you can download the app and make questions from there. I can read it and ask to the panelists. Or you can raise your hand and go to the side and ask the question from there. Let's start by introducing our panelists. First, we have Mr. Eduardo Bohórquez. He is General Director of Transparencia Internacional in Mexico. He will be talking about open data is not transparent data. Let's start, please.
Thank you very much, Cesar. I'm pleased to be here with you in this panel. I could be devil's advocate in this panel because I work for Transparency International. So you could imagine that normally we're in favor of openness and making data available to everyone. No? That's our key mandate. But I think we should stop for a while and make a quick group of comments on certain issues that are going to be relevant for the next years. First of all, we assume that transparency, for instance, is equal to honesty. No? There are many places where we think that transparency equals honesty, and it doesn't equal honesty. No? One thing is to be transparent, and a different one is to be part of a community that praises integrity or is honest. So these are different things, and we should be aware of that. The other thing is that, at least in the Latin American case and Mexico in particular, transparency is a proactive way of dealing with the right to know. We were very lucky that we were discussing access to information laws back in the 90s. And from the very beginning, we decided that transparency had to be proactive. Governments should proactively open information for innovation or for accountability or for independent evaluation. And the right to know is the last resource you have. No? When you have to go to the court to secure the disclosure of information, that's your last resource, not your first resource. So in Latin America, and particularly in Mexico, openness has been associated with transparency from the very beginning of the discussion in the late 90s. And at the same time, we were conscious that when we were disclosing information, we should also preserve another set of rights that are in our constitution. For instance, privacy and the protection of personal data. So from the very beginning in the discussion of transparency, accountability, open data, open government, open parliaments, and other issues in Mexico, we were very clear that we need to distinguish between concepts. So it's not really fussy, and you assume things. One example is open data. No? For here in smart cities, I'm pretty sure that this is very obvious, but it's not obvious for everyone that open data doesn't mean making data public. It means that it has the right format for interoperability of databases, for exchanging in a very simple way using robots and other tools and software, information that should be available for different purposes. And it doesn't mean that it has to be on a website. No? And for you, it's very obvious, but not for everyone. People assume that open data has to be public, and in certain cases, it's relevant to have public open data, but it's not a synonymous, in this case, of openness to be transparent. No, it's a different thing. It's open in terms of format, in terms of the way we are preserving information and using it, and in the capacity for a robot or a software to automatically use that information. So in Mexico, for instance, we have been releasing a lot of data sets in terms of open data, but that doesn't mean that you're not protecting rights like privacy or personal data associated with those databases. And in many cases, the disclosure in open data of large amounts of information shouldn't be public to everyone, but to very concrete groups of stakeholders, depending on the needs. One very, very simple and classic example is in procurement. I don't know if you are aware of this, but sometimes when you are disclosing the budget for a project, the market will behave in terms of competition in a terrible way. The collusion may be present because they know how much budget you have, and if you're disclosing it not in the best possible moment, you will find that you are creating different problems, at least in terms of competition. And the other counterexample is national security. In certain cases, people talk about national security for disclosing data or disclosing information. Let me provide you an example. The size of the shoes of our military forces. It was a huge discussion 10 years ago if that was national security information or personal data. Of course, each one of the boots is associated with one person, and the size and number of boots you are buying for our military forces may be used to know how many people you are actually included in your army, if it's a secret figure for everyone. Our constitutional court for the right to know decided that it wasn't national security, because you were basically procuring or buying boots for the military, and that the size of each one of them couldn't be associated with one single individual. So basically, all the information related with the procurement of boots in the Mexican army and many other things that are bought by our armed forces are public in the traditional way, because it's not as simple as saying that you can connect someone to a person. Finally, one of the reasons for being here is a very provocative initiative we launched in 2015, which voluntarily discloses the assets, the declaration of assets, the declaration of taxes, now very popular in US politics, and the declaration of interests of candidates to Congress or to public offices. And because they are doing it voluntarily using standard formats, basically they are accepting that the information is public, even if it includes certain personal data that they willingly are signing to disclose. So just to summarize this first introduction and see how we can organize the conversation, I think we are in the moment in which we have to very, very clearly define which is the kind of issue we want to deal with. For the Mexican case, especially in government, all the information is public unless you prove that it will affect a human right, or disclosing it will affect a human right, or disclosing it will affect the national security. And using these very simple tools, we have basically disclosed all the information with the exception of a very, very small percentage of data and information that could enter these two conditions. The second point is that when that information, you were mentioning phone calls and numbers and other, the information you voluntarily disclose to a third party, a company or a firm, in those cases, the Mexican legislation obliges the company to have a contract with each one of the citizens to be perfectly conscious that you are sharing information and that they are using it in a different possible way. Again, these are the limits. This is a contractual obligation between a citizen and a third party that voluntarily discloses that. But I think in many ways, what I'm trying to suggest is that we need to be very clear about what we are discussing and how to deal with several aspects of a same apparently entangled issue. We need to be very clear about the concepts, otherwise we will simply say that everything is national security or everything should be public, and we need to distinguish the boundaries between all these concepts and examples, just for a start point and to put certain issues on the table. Thank you, Cesar.
Okay. Thank you, Eduardo. Well, now we have Mrs. Ann Sandelin. She is Director of Urban Development Projects for the city of Jyväskylä. Difficult to pronounce.
Thank you. It was nice pronunciation. We practiced it in the back room, Jyväskylä. So I come from Jyväskylä, that it's a city in the central Finland, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the urban city project, the smart city project that we're working on there with from the perspective of cybersecurity. Kangas, this is the area, is one of our most important urban development projects. There used to be an old paper mill in the area, and now we're turning it into the extension of the city center area with 2,000 jobs and 500 residents, and it will be finished about 2030. Here you can see the aspects that we consider Kangas. We like to talk about wise Kangas instead of a smart city as a brand, because we hope to do things wisely here. We have integrated smart parking, waste management. We're recycling building materials using smart energy solutions like defrosting the pavements in a wintertime by using recycled water from the district heating. We're building smart services and a sensory infrastructure there as well. We're thinking about how to take smartly care of the senior and elderly people in their housing environments, and developing a digital accessibility and from that a digital identity. And one of the goals in our Smart City project is that Kangas will be the most cyber-secure area in the most stable country in the world. This is one of the sub-projects. It's a centralized locking and access control system in the area. And we see that it will be a significant innovation enabler when you think about it in a holistic system, controlling the access and management there. It will lower the life cycle costs with the inhabitants, increase the convenience there. So one Kangas will have a multiple space and just use one key there. And it will have a easy deployment for the new services built on that. And when we give the promise of the smart city in Kangas, it is day-to-day existence in Kangas is agreeable, easy, and secure in pleasant environment, then we have to consider the cybersecurity. We drafted a cybersecurity strategy in Kangas in 2015, together with the 2 universities in Jyväskylä specialized in cybersecurity in their facilities. And since we have a complex system with devices and different kind of systems there, we need to ensure the cybersecurity, and it will be a constant work throughout the life cycle of the city. Now that we're planning it and building it, and then when the people are using the city. With the strategy, we have 3 cornerstones: management model, contractual obligations, and risk-based action plans. Just quickly go through them. I still have 5 minutes left. The management model, I think one of the big questions is that how do we organize the governance, because it is a key to creating a secure environment. The key topics are that, which we still don't have answers to all of them, is that who decides and who is responsible for the overall security in the area? Who will participate in doing it? How do we operate, and where do we get the resources for that? And how do we create the resilience? The risk-based action plans, this is about some of it about transparency and openness, because we need to do the risk evaluations as a whole, and we need all relevant actors to participate in the risk management and implementation of the controls, both domain experts and cybersecurity experts and people living in the area. And it's not enough that we do it once. We have to keep evaluating it in regular intervals or when major changes occur in the area. The second one is contractual liabilities. At the moment, in cybersecurity, we ignore it for tenders and contractors. There is a lack of competence in acquisitions in our organizations, I can say, probably in many other organizations concerning smart cities. We have to take cybersecurity as a part of the acquisition. We have to define, evaluate, and monitor how it's done, and keep and continuously monitor the cybersecurity and the measures there. From the residents' perspective, when we make the promise of a smart city, it's open, it's smart, it's experimental, then the residents must have right for the privacy and the net neutrality in the area. And so the services that we provide there, the smart services, must be trustworthy. And as we see it, nobody else at the moment steps up and says that, yes, I will take the responsibility for the overall cybersecurity. So we've seen that so far the city must take action there for the basic infrastructure and also for the surrounding services. Well, as a conclusion, the cybersecurity requires resources, both during the construction and the use, and as we've noticed also in the planning phases as well. And this is the cost that nobody has been prepared for yet. And as we fulfill the cybersecurity promise, the city needs to be involved. And in Kangas, we've taken the emphasis is on improving the resilience in a cost-efficient manner, because it's not that if the smart city will be hacked, it's the question is that when will it be hacked, and how long it takes for us to notice it. And cybersecurity should be part of our normal operative resourcing in the smart city, not a separate thing, but thing that it's integrated in the processes. Thank you. This was about Kangas, and we invite you to innovate with us if we have any ideas and thoughts before you start hacking our smart city project. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Well, now we have Mrs. Victoria Beltran. She is postdoc researcher at University of Murcia. She will be talking about a platform for secure data management in a smart city.
Well, thank you for coming. Let me introduce you an European-funded project in which I have been working. It is called SmartTeam. And well, it's an approach to improve the data privacy and security in smart cities. Well, I think everybody knows what the term smart city is meant to be. So let me come straight to the point. The first characteristic of a smart city is the large scale. We will deal with millions of devices working in domain-specific applications and provided by different vendors. When it comes to data governance, security, and privacy, this large scale actually will make it very difficult to the city's authorities to employ uniform policies. And in fact, it's not only a matter of scalability, but the main barrier to a proper, correct security and privacy is the own limitations of IoT makers that many times leave security very poorly applied or even undefined. So this lack of security actually is putting the success of smart cities at risk. Because if citizens don't trust IoT services and IoT devices, they won't basically participate in them. And well, I think everybody can understand it. It's a normal reaction if many citizens fear the IoT, the Internet of Things, because there is much at risk. If any cyber attack achieved to control e-health devices, internet-connected cars, or citizens' homes, the citizens can really be in danger. And if we think at the city scale, the harmful consequences of a cyber attack are countless. Fake information that can create panic, chaos, a cyber attack that can control the supply networks in the city, that can cause traffic accidents, or a cyber attack that can compromise the citizens' privacy. So the point in my presentation is that we really need to consider security and privacy as a first-class requirement and the principal design. And this is precisely the goal of the SmartTeam project. The result is a platform for data dissemination whose functionality is very basic. Basically, it retrieves data from IoT devices and disseminates data to data consumers. But it does this functionality in a secure way and based on user privacy rules. So this is an user-centric approach. In fact, the platform on the guidelines and principle of a reference framework, the IoT reference architecture reference model, the IoT ARM, that is a framework to create IoT platforms based on quality of service parameters. In fact, this framework was created in another European funded project, and we are trying to analyze the framework and see how we can use it. And well, we think that we see the Smarty platform as an integrating platform, in the sense that other domain-specific applications can use the platform, can be built on top of the platform, and so in this way the city can have some guarantees that the data management is done based on certain security levels, and the higher level applications can use the data to build their own services. Well, just to mention that the project is a consortium of telcos, Artist Labs, is the former Telecom Portugal, some research labs like NEC, IHP, some medium-sized enterprises, and an academic partner. This is University of Murcia. This is where I come from. Well, I think I'm not going to get into technical details, but I just would like to highlight the different technologies that we are dealing with in the platform. The first is access control. We have two kinds of access control that take a user-centric approach. First, for constrained devices, we use a decentralized authorization model based on authorization tokens. The constrained device, the server, can locally verify the authorization rules that actually are set within the token. The token is a cryptographic token, so the server can also can verify the authenticity, the identity of the client. This method improves the security of access control lists. We have another authorization method that is based on encryption for highly efficient dissemination of data. We use an IoT broker, and in fact, this broker doesn't verify authorization, but instead, the broker just encrypts data based on application level attributes. Okay, and that way, the dissemination of data to several recipients, to several consumers, is very efficient, and revocation is easy, because we just need to change the application level attributes. We also deal with device bootstrapping. We think that the device, from the very beginning, from the first moment that you connect the device, from the moment that the device starts working, the device should be secured. So we have defined a secure and lightweight bootstrapping mechanism so that the device can authenticate to the platform and to obtain the cryptographic material that will enable the device to start working in a secure way. Well, lastly, we also apply encryption in the database, and encryption is also done based on application level attributes. The point is that, for example, you can have a role for an user and encrypt data for that user. Well, to demonstrate the necessity for security and privacy and how the Smarty platform can help on it, we have deployed several pilots, real pilots in several cities. In University of Murcia, we have a smart building that is fully monitored through sensors, and we record the presence of people within the building. The point in this use case is to show how, in normal circumstances, you don't give any personal information about the people in the building. For example, to efficiently manage the energy in the building, you need to know presence, because people interact with sensors, with actuators, and you can get this presence information. But the information is anonymous. But in exceptional circumstances, in emergencies, such as a fire alarm, you can give personal information to the building manager, for example. You can give the people's phone number, the mobility conditions, and so on. And this authorization is implicit and is based on encryption, as I just said, based on the role of the destinations. We have another use case, another pilot. This is located in Serbia. The Smarty platform is integrated with a smart public transportation system. So the platform collects data about the buses, other transports, and also collects more sensitive data about, for example, pollution alerts or traffic-related events. Here the platform ensures guarantees that no fake information is injected, and also that we can give critical information, such as pollution alert, only to the authorized people. In the last use case, the platform has been integrated in Frankfurt, Germany, with a smart traffic management system. The platform collects data about the lights status and also about the location of ambulances. When an ambulance is approaching a light, an algorithm, well, I'm talking about the service on top of a Smarty, the application will execute an algorithm and will synchronize the lights in order to let the ambulance cross the road as fast as possible, and for sure in a safe way. So here the platform will, through the authorization method based on authorization tokens, the platform ensures that no one can take control on the lights, and there is no fake information, as I said. And basically, here the importance of security is stronger, because we are dealing with the safety of the drivers and ambulances and so on. This is all. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer you. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Now we have Mr. Mohamad Amin Hasbini. He is a senior security researcher in the Kaspersky Lab's global research and analysis team. He will be talking about balancing security and privacy in smart cities. Really?
Hi. So thank you for being with us today. My presentation is more about really going back to the basics of the need of balancing the security and privacy, and some of the things that we are currently doing a bit wrong. So you probably already have seen these stats multiple times. We are moving towards more urbanized regions, and these are highly challenging in terms of services and containing congestion. And we also love to see graphics around smart cities. They are extremely promising, and they are really a good presentation of our future. And I even got like another. So I have an exaggerated example, a little bit. Now, some people wanted to see this. Okay. We're putting a lot of emphasis on our future, and we definitely need to better plan for it. So this is an exaggerated example that I want to address in this presentation. We see that when we want to compare our ancient life with a bit of what is happening on the internet today, we'll think a bit differently about what we need to do around the information security for smart cities specifically, or modern and future cities. First, we used to live in tribes. Tribes had interests, causes, priorities. They had their own communities, and they do whatever they want. And on the modern internet, we definitely have some similar things. We do social networking. We have specific websites, news websites, politics, etc. On the internet, we also fight. In ancient tribes, we used to fight for powers, land, water, knowledge maybe, so if some people know how to grow some type of food that we really want to know about. We hear about cyber espionage and intellectual property attacks all the time now on the internet. And this struggle of power is definitely causing a lot of damage for everyone, not to mention critical infrastructure attacks. Strong leaders on the internet are definitely there, and in many cases they are capable of knowing what is happening and seeing what is happening. It could be through vendors or countries, etc., etc. They do all sorts of influential activities. They are translated into ads, marketing, etc. They just have different names. And every once in a while, in tribes, they had some epidemics, which could be like a sickness of some kind or other stuff. And in our case, we have just last week an example, a very big example actually, the Mirai botnet, which took down the internet in whole countries, such as Liberia, or attacked the DNS in the United States and caused service damage for many very large organizations. You probably already have heard about that in the news. So we are currently moving towards a bit of difficulties. Actually, large difficulties that we definitely need to be more aware of and plan for. And the issue here is not about single actions from single countries or from single organizations. It's about global collaboration around regulating and controlling what is happening on the internet. So, as a start, and back to basics, do we have a specific definition for what is the privacy that we need on the internet? Like, are we expecting to block all types of data coming out from our devices? We need a service, right? We do have and need services online, and we need to share data with these services to be able to get something back. And again, we also need to define what is the privacy that we're asking for. Currently, I hear a lot of calls for full encryption of everything. But is it really something that we want when we are protected as much as a criminal or a terrorist? That's definitely something very difficult to handle and to be able to sustain and to control inside a smart city. Then privacy from whom? That's definitely the next stage of where we need to go. We need definitions of these. These are basic requirements for knowing and planning forward in smart environments. This is just a simple example. If I'm calling for a pizza, I need to share my address. I need probably to share my name. They will get my phone number. And we definitely, I really want the pizza, so I need to give them the correct information, right? So this is similar. This is just basic information that we just have no agreement on at the moment. So further, we really need centralized, global, independent regulation of the internet. Why? Because we need an authority that defines the regulations, and we need agreement all over the world over these regulations and enforcement, of course. And this is currently not in the best. We see that it's not doing really good. So we also need centralized law enforcement efforts, of course. Currently, especially when you have political struggles, something good happening in somewhere could be differently understood. And this was also discussed just now. it could be good for some people, it could be bad for some people. And that's not how things should go on the internet. Because if we move forward with having good regulations that are able to control the digital world, we definitely will be able to preserve the privacy and security and move the progress of the innovation fight from good versus evil, like good people versus criminals, towards more of the good versus better and the best for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Amin. Well, now we have some time for questions. Anyone from the audience has questions can walk to the side, to the microphone, and ask the question. Okay. Thank you. So we have some questions from the application. One is for Mrs. Sandelin. Did you implement any city cert for manage the cybersecurity incidents? City cert, I mean city certificate, certification authority. It doesn't say. Oh, that's with uppercase. Here is lowercase. Sorry, it refers to city emergency response team.
Not yet, not at the moment. We're just building the Kangas area, but this is definitely what we're thinking about, especially with, for example, with the water plant, and they're going through some development projects together with the university and testing labs concerning the cybersecurity on those areas.
Thank you. So we have another question here that says, how is our privacy going to decrease on the following years? Anyone? I guess it refers to examples.
Well, it depends on multiple factors. First, on how much there will be collaboration on protecting the privacy, but from the other side, it will be all about the technologies, the invasive technologies that we will be adopting inside our lives and our homes, and then the services that we will be needing. So the more services we'll be using from the cloud, the more data that we will need to share.
Well, I think that it will depend very much on how laws and regulations are going to be defined in the next years. Because if no regulations emerge, international regulations, as we saw, we will keep seeing attacks like the American attack on the DDS. And well, we need to be sure when we buy a sensor or a camera that it is going to work securely, without compromising our privacy, without a cyber attack that can use our default password and see what we are doing with at home or what our children are doing. Yeah.
Thanks. Any other thoughts?
Maybe we can refer to an alternative scenario, which is not the smart cities one. A lot of the population of the world are not there yet. And there is a lot of information that is already public, is commercialized without the knowledge of the people that are part of those databases. No? Think about health databases that are being sold to everyone. I'm just referring to one very particular scenario. And I think if again, the balance between making public this information and regulating the disclosure of it is crucial. You can create black markets of information by saying you are protecting it. And governments sometimes and many times are selling that information to private parties without the knowledge of the citizen. So I think we have several trends at the same time happening. One is smart cities, the cybersecurity side, but also there is a lot of information that is not properly gathered, managed in, I will say, for almost 90% of the world population. and we need to discuss that as well, no? How we're going to manage that information that is already in the government's possession. Your question about privacy from whom is relevant. No? The government has a lot of information on us, and we don't know how it's managed and sold. So I think sometimes it's better to simply disclose it and break a lot of black markets that are occurring with public information.
Okay, thank you. Here we have another question. Could the panelists share their thoughts on recent findings that an IoT worm could hack a public street light and lead to citywide risks?
Who has the worm?
Yeah, well, there are real examples, and they're all over the place. You can see real examples of street lighting manipulation on the internet through IoT devices. We still see that cybersecurity is not being taken as serious as needed, and that is definitely, like, we've been outside, and there's all sorts of amazing technologies, but not much focus around how we're going to protect them. And we're still waiting to see, like, we don't need to wait for like big incidents. We already had some, but somehow vendors are still not really convinced that we need the security over the functions and the features and more of the benefits from a platform. It's still unknown. It's still not really promising. This IoT botnet, just 145,000 cameras. This is just a simple example from the last few weeks.
I think as many times as buyers, the public organizations should pay more attention to the procurement and demand the certifications and then audit them as well. It's not, we're just discussing in the back room that it's not enough that you say, check, we have the cybersecurity measures checked, and check. And if you don't audit them actually. So I think there's a lot of learning to be done on that sector. And as buyers, we have to take the responsibility as well.
Sorry, one thing to add is around even our home devices. Like, who is currently in charge of updating and ensuring the security of even our home devices, like smart devices and smart TVs, or fridges, or coffee machines, etc.? Currently, no one, because the user is not aware, and the vendor is mainly concerned about selling the device and showing you like all the features that they do. And at the moment, there are no solutions.
Anyone else? Okay, let's see another question. Well, this is related probably with this. What are the security threats for a smart city?
Well, you can start with simple stuff, such as your home devices being off or taken by ransom, and then you can move towards having a whole infrastructure, water treatment facilities manipulation, or turning off power. That's already happened. Maybe turning off the transportation system. Like we're all very excited about auto-driving cars, right? Like, and they will be connected all over the place, and they will also connect to a command center, which will control all of these devices and manage congestion, etc. These are extremely good things, but if someone can take them down, or some team or some state can take them down in somewhere, we'll be worried about casualties. And that's definitely something we need to stay far away from.
Yeah, I think that talking about smart homes, there is an evident example that is automatic lock systems. In fact, an analysis or research from the University of Berkeley has demonstrated recently that 4 makers of automatic locks are vulnerable. I mean, they managed to open the doors automatically while the owner was working outside of home. They broke the security of the automatic lock system. And it was basically because of a vulnerability of the access control list of these devices. So we can imagine the risk. Maybe we are outside, maybe our family is within within our house. So the risks are countless. Yeah.
I can continue with that. We're actually working with 4 different vendors at the moment with the aerial locking system, and by the looks of it, it looks at least 2 or 3 of them haven't considered the cybersecurity enough. So we're doing an audit to them to the systems together with the university. So we'll see what happens. Maybe that also inspires them to work with those themes. Actually, in Finland, we had last week 2 small incidents where building automation systems were hacked in a few apartment buildings, and they turned down the heating. We had -10 at the moment. They turned down the heating systems and the hot water, and another municipality, probably at the same time, they shut down the cooling system for the ice skating rink. So that was just pranks, but it could have been worse.
Thank you. You have a question there?
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for the interesting insights. I think especially the Smarty platform is a nice tool for governments to enforce policies and regulations on data security and data privacy. But my boss used to like to say that a fool with a tool is still a fool. And if you don't have the regulations, then of course you cannot force them. So my question basically is, if we want centralized law enforcement and regulations that make sense for everybody, that fulfill a global standard maybe, whom do you see in the driver's seat to set up these regulations, to set up these guidelines? Do we need like a UN Charter of Data Rights on a global level? Is it federal governments who should be on the driver's seats, local governments, or maybe companies? What is your opinion on that?
Okay, so thank you for the question. Well, do we have independent international organizations doing law enforcement stuff? Probably yes. It could be something like the United Nations, maybe with the Interpol, or now they have the Cyberpol in Singapore. So yes, there are possible options that could help in identifying and developing regulatory compliance standards or controls for countries to comply with. That's the goal, and that's what's most important. Because afterwards, when these are defined, as you mentioned, there will be accountability, and there will be enforcement, and there will be punishment. If some country is responsible for a major attack on another country, and we don't want to go into attribution now. That's a whole different story. But if we are able to identify how an attack is happening through enforcement over many countries around the world, then we are able to identify the attacks and the attackers, and we are able to go forward into more of the punishment type of rules against these, probably.
Okay, thank you. We have really few time, and I have a last question. How to embed security at design as early as possible in the smart city planning and implementation?
I think it has to start with the vision and the attitude level, and once you've accomplished common knowledge or common goal on that area, then you just have to start doing the roadmap and by step. We actually did an action plan, but I can't tell you that, because if I told you, I would have to silence you all after that. But you have to go into the action plan and learn by doing. I think it's quite a new thing for all of us.
Well, actually, I think that we really need some kind of labeling system or certification, some means for a city to provide a core technology and underlying technology as the Smarty platform or something similar that is certified. Because you cannot trust IoT providers, IoT makers that they are going to follow your own rules and your own legislation. But if you implement a core technology that is certified, that you know that can guarantee certain levels of security, you can start from that point. But we need to regulate that, a certification. Yeah.
Okay, so a last comment. It has to start with the governance. It has to start with the right regulations and authorities taking charge of these issues, because afterwards comes the policies, the standards, and the definition of these problems or how to control the information security. And then afterwards comes the technologies that will be complying with the governance and the strategy. These are definitely the most important.
A final comment. If you solve this in the cyberspace, you'll be solving a bigger problem, which is a governance problem for a lot of things. Criminal law, good governance, corruption, the proper enforcement. So please share all the benefits of what you're saying with the rest of the world, because there are so many issues in which there are going to be applications for what you're saying. If there is a proper centralized regulation in an issue, that will be fantastic learning for the UN and for other governance bodies. I think we need to start thinking that the problems of the traditional world are also embedded into the new economy and the new world we're creating, and information sharing and knowledge will be crucial to solve both dilemmas.
I'm sorry, but we don't have any more time for questions. We are running out of time. I want to thank you to all the panelists for their contribution, and thank you for listening and for the interesting questions. We will be around if anyone wants to reach us and ask more questions. We will be here. Thank you.